Hi, welcome to Live and Local. My name's Gary Sanders. Tonight we're going to be doing a half hour with 3 candidates for the County Board of Supervisors. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. We are 2 weeks from now going to do a conversation with 2 or 3 other candidates for supervisor. Okay, on the show tonight from my right is Terrence Neuzil, one of the incumbents, Rick Dvorak, and Jim Knapp. And in the election, which is June 8th, you can vote for 3, 2, 1, whatever you choose. And you can also vote now at the auditors, and later on in the month there'll be places for you to vote at the library and the hospital, excuse me, a few other satellite stations. Okay, let's get right at it. Terrence, you're the incumbent. Why should somebody vote for you? I mean, are things really good in Johnson County and you deserve another term or not?
Yeah, I think so. You look at where the Johnson County Board of Supervisors were just 4 years ago, and you think about the kind of planning that we've put in place. I mean, for the first time in Johnson County history, we've put together a strategic plan, we put together a county campus plan, we put together a county farm plan.
Wait, could I?
Sure,
what, a campus plan?
Yeah.
Isn't campus like U of Iowa? What's a...
Yeah, a campus plan. What that is identifying that the administration building is the area where we want county government to be located for the long term. Board of Supervisors, when they put the administration building together and they designed it, they landlocked it. And so the first test was to see if we want to be able to expand or grow that particular building, we would have to go and acquire the armory and that particular piece of land. Once that was able to be accomplished, then we were able to look at other areas. And through the committee process and through the community process, we were able to identify, at this point, the block that is to the north of the current administration building.
Where Community Motors is.
Community Motors, RT's, and a number of other locations.
So you've already purchased that?
No, the Board of Supervisors hasn't purchased that yet, but the county is in the process right now of working with different assessors to evaluate the cost of those particular buildings.
Okay, that's the campus plan.
Yeah.
The strategic plan is what?
Strategic plan, and Rick can talk to you more about that as well, but it primarily is a document that gives us a good guide of where Johnson County would like to be, not only today, but how we could measure where we want to go in 5 years from now.
So growth.
Yes, sure, it's growth, but it's basically all the different departments of all county government getting together and saying, what is your goals for the next 5 years? How are we going to reach those goals, and how are we going to measure those goals? It was all part of, I think, a question of what is the role of county government, and that's part of that strategic plan.
That strategic plan, campus plan,
county farm plan. That's another one in the first time in county histories. County farm plan is an area that is identified mostly through what people know as Chatham Oaks. It's an area that's off of and towards IWV Road in Melrose. It's a 163-acre tract that the county has owned for many, many years, and we put a plan in place of what we would like to see on those tracts of land. And what we've identified is space and growth for Chatham Oaks. We've identified there's also a number of county farm buildings, an asylum, historical asylum. We would like to see those buildings preserved. And a majority of that particular piece of land is actually going to be a new county city park.
Okay,
with trail
and was there a fourth type of plan?
Yes. Then there's the economic development plan. That's another one we've checked off the list. It's a plan that identifies primarily where we would like to see economic development grow in Johnson County. We've identified particularly key intersections where we believe that we can provide the infrastructure. I mean, for the most part, commercial development in Johnson County is going to occur within the cities, but there are some key particular intersections. For instance, Interstate 80 and Herbert Hoover Highway would be one. We've identified the Oxford Interchange as a potential other. The Kelowna Cheese Factory is a third.
Okay. So these 4 plans, how many have been adopted so far?
All 4 of those plans have been adopted now. So when people say, well, why are you running? I want to actually see those babies implemented.
And I assume that these are available at the county office for people to look at?
Yeah, they are also on the webpage at www.johnson-county.com.
Okay, so this is what you've accomplished, and along with the other 4.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things
others
too.
But
sure,
we'll get to
those are good 4
Well, I mean, those seem pretty good. Yeah. Jim, do you have a problem with any of that?
Well, I think that the county supervisors have done a very good job in planning. I think they've put together a plan that has good potential. I would, I guess, say that nothing is perfect. Things can be fine-tuned. I look at some of the things that prior supervisors boards have committed the county to, and I see a lot of problems there, and I think we're going to have to deal with those also, like the North Corridor. The entire area was rezoned basically residential, and that's one of the real pristine areas of the county, one of the areas of beauty in the county, and I hate to see it all just turn into a hodgepodge of development. So I guess I'm pretty well concerned about what happens.
So would you like to see it rezoned to get it out of residential?
It's very difficult to downzone. It's at its highest level of zoning right now, but I think the thing is, if we can, and it's possibly going in, and maybe this is a dirty word, I don't know, but going in and getting some federal funding and buy back. We got the wetlands. Nobody's going to be building into the wetlands. So if we can start working from the wetlands out, establish a perimeter, move out towards that, and maybe reestablish some forestry or some prairie or something like this, and get the areas out so that we aren't disturbing this and the developers don't come in and take this over. Now, that's what I would look forward to seeing done. Bike trails, nature trails, get it out there where the people can enjoy, the public, where the people can come out and enjoy themselves on bicycles. Primarily, it's just to keep the development from growing rampant. I am afraid that a lot of people have planned and they've said, well, 50,000 people maybe living in the corridor in the next 10 years or something like that. I personally don't believe that. I think we're going to see a time when there's going to be a lot more moving back into the cities. I think we're overbuilt on apartments now, and as we overbuild with apartments, what happens is we're going to see people moving out of some of these houses. These houses are going to get restored. Single families are going to move back into them. So I don't think the demand for the county ground is going to, or not the county ground, but the North Corridor is going to be quite as strong as it is. At least I'm hoping not, because that involves a lot of additional capital expenditures in order to do it properly. It can't be a hodgepodge of development. It has to be a planned development if there is going to be any out there. And already there's a lot of protest, and I agree with these people. The county's come up with a plan where they wanted to do certain roads and do certain things, and I don't think it's necessary. I think it's just a large expenditure of money that in times like this, we've inherited some pretty bad economic times from not from the county itself, but from the state and the federal government. And I think it's time that we all need to pull our belts in a little bit and maybe absorb some of the slack and try to spend our dollars more wisely. I guess that would be the best thing I would say is we need to look at the plans, all of the plans they've got in place, and see which ones will work and how well they'll work, and do some economic studies on it. And Terry's much more knowledgeable about that as Rick.
Okay, let's get to Rick, if you don't mind. Rick Dvorak, candidate for supervisor, and why don't you tell the folks what your present job is, and maybe respond to what Jim said about the planning, whether it's a hodgepodge or whether we have some kind of plan that's workable, or what's happening out there.
I came to Johnson County in 1989 as the Assistant Zoning Administrator for Johnson County. I was appointed the Director of Planning and Zoning in 1995, excuse me. Prior to me coming here, there was really very little planning. There were some great planning documents, but there really wasn't any implementation of those documents. So the Board of Supervisors at that time decided to rewrite the land use plan and trying to make it a viable, usable document that would allow for sustainable growth throughout the county. We determined primarily 3 or 4 areas where we thought development should occur. Our primary interest was in the fringes of the cities, and it was my responsibility to start working relationships with the cities and trying to have fringe area agreements that would dictate what type of development should be within those fringes.
Has that been accomplished?
I've accomplished most of them, or excuse me. I'm not the policymaker. I just give the information to the board, but I do a lot of the negotiations up front. We have fringe area agreements primarily with the majority of the county in the metropolitan area, which I would say is Iowa City, North Liberty, Coralville. We have an agreement with Tiffin. We have an agreement with Solon, Shoeyville. I guess it's been easier to say which one we didn't have agreements with. And that would be Hills and Oxford right now. I'm in the process of negotiating. In fact, I just came from a hearing where we're negotiating a three-way agreement between the city of Cedar Rapids, which is quite unique, and the city of Swisher for agreement for what type of commercial and industrial development will occur on 965. So I think the county is definitely moving in the right direction. In the next month, staff will be presenting to the board some ideas on reviewing our land use plan, which is a little over 5 years old now. It's been our policy to bring that back to the board every 5 years for a review. And there's some areas that the staff would like to touch on, and I think the board members have things they want to touch on. That's kind of why I want to be on the Board of Supervisors is, of course, to make sure these policies get implemented.
Well, are you worried? I mean, you've got a pretty big job now, and you'd be taking a pay cut to be on the Board of Supervisors, isn't that right?
Well, it may appear that way. I've been doing this for 32 years. I am able to retire with IPERS in June, which basically next month. I'll be 55, which qualifies me for IPERS. So with my benefits from IPERS, retirement benefit from IPERS, and the Board of Supervisors salary, I'll be making around the same amount of money as I am now, maybe even a little bit more. I don't know for sure.
So you'd be a double dipper. Or a big dipper.
I wouldn't call it either.
A little dipper.
I think I've put my 32 years into, I think I've earned that.
I didn't mean that pejoratively.
No, I know.
Double dipper. Well, but still.
Half of that money was mine.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. But, I mean, there must be, you're interested in seeing this plan being implemented. Are you at all worried that if you're not on the board, it won't be implemented?
It's always a possibility. As you're aware, there's 3 seats open.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know exactly how the other candidates feel about the implementation. I know Pat and Terrence have been fairly supportive and almost 100% supportive of what staff has presented them. They've followed through with our recommendations countless times. So I probably would say Terrence and Pat, I think we can work with them very easily. And I don't know the views of the other candidates.
All right, so
I really
none of
can't
the
comment.
others, you're not familiar with whether they were all in favor of implementing these plans?
Not enough.
Well, I wish we could, in the future, we'll ask the others. Jim, have you looked at the plans? Are you familiar enough that you could say whether you believe in implementing them?
I think some of the plans, I haven't looked at them as thoroughly or obviously as much as Rick or Terrence have, but from what I've seen, some of what we're going to do about the campus, I'm a little at odds with. It seems to me that obviously we have the National Guard Armory now, or the Army, whatever property, and it's right south of the municipal county building. So we've got a good area there to work with, a good nucleus, and the county has gone ahead and purchased a couple other pieces of property. I guess the sad thing is that every time you take a piece of property off the tax rolls, which the county is doing, you take a taxable portion of the taxes, so your taxes are going to go up automatically because you eliminated that from the tax rolls. Now, if they go in and take places like Hawkeye Lumber, I think that's a real mistake because Hawkeye Lumber has been sitting there for a long time. They don't want to leave, and I think that things can be done south of the municipal building much easier by going vertically rather than by going out horizontally. I think if you go up vertically, you can accomplish more on the same unless
Rick or Terrence, is Hawkeye Lumber in the plan to be taken away?
Hawkeye Lumber is part of that.
Okay.
One of the things, though, Jim brings up a good point, and it's something I brought up in our committee process. It's in the capital improvements process. Number one, that's not actually in the land use plan. Land use plan is more for growth and development in the unincorporated areas. But in the county campus plan, one of the things that I presented to the board would be to actually take the land that is the Armory, that is going to be county government, and instead of going out horizontally, is to actually build a facility on that property and put a parking ramp in between the two. And I hope that idea is still alive. I'll tell you right now that idea was not very popular.
Okay.
But nonetheless, I think that if the kind of negotiations doesn't work out with the landowners that are to the north of the administration building, I hope that that's an option.
Okay. Rick, let me ask you this: since you're running because you want to see this plan implemented, if we had a third person who committed to implement all these plans, would you just withdraw? Or?
Well, that's. I don't know if I got cut off or I cut myself off.
I
but,
might have done it.
Obviously, that's not the only reason I want to run.
Oh, there's other. Okay, I'm sorry.
There are countless other reasons. Primarily, I think my platform primarily is experience. I'm not running against Terrence, and I'm not running against Jim. I'm running because I think I can do a very, very good job for the county. I've been doing it for 32 years. I've worked in law enforcement. I was a transportation officer for Cedar County. I worked in the health department. I'm a registered sanitarian. I ran a landfill. I built a transfer station and managed that. So my interests are varied. Land use, is very important to me, obviously, because that's what my primary position is. But I'm interested in county government.
Okay, let's get off land use in the short time we have left. Terrence, what about this county labor negotiator, Judith Perkins? Are you in favor of keeping her on or not? Because I've heard an awful lot that she's been very contentious and not really smooth in her negotiations.
Yeah, I think that what we have here right now is a situation where county management has a stern individual leader, and then you have the union negotiator, which is also a stern individual leader, and you have these two heads butting with each other. I've said all along, since I've been on the board has been transitioning away from using the county attorney's office for labor negotiations. In the past, the board used the county attorney then worked with the board. The board eventually hired a human resources director, and Laura Ceramic was hired just pretty much right before Pat Harney and I were on the Board of Supervisors. Throughout that time, in my mind, it's always been a transitional phase of letting the Human Resources Department gain more experience, understand where the Board of Supervisors and the other elected officials would like to see their negotiations go. And the board hired a consultant during that interim period. In my opinion, our particular staff of Human Resources, with the addition of Jen Feldman, who is the Assistant Human Resources Director, Jen just recently was certified in a number of areas. It seems to me that looking at the kind of cost that the county is paying for
$135 an hour, I believe, to Judith Perkins?
It's a $20,000 budgeted position. We're looking at a situation, in my opinion, that we can phase that program out, and I'd like to see that.
So that's great. So you're making a commitment that that's going to...
I've made a commitment before.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Great. When do you think this will take place?
Well, again, I think that it's important for me to, communicate my thoughts once again with our board and with our human resources director and ask them, are they ready? Because it seems to me it's logical that with two well-qualified human resources individuals within the county, it seems logical to me that we would be able to move forward.
So
and be able to phase
this year, you see that happening this year?
I think it could happen this year.
All right,
Absolutely.
excellent.
Absolutely.
Because I have heard a lot of grumbling from a variety of working people in the county. We have 400 people who work for the county, 300 approximately are in the bargaining unit. So I have heard grumbling, and that's great to hear that you're going to do something about that.
I hear grumbling. I hear grumbling on both sides.
Yeah, we certainly don't need any contentious individuals doing labor management relations.
Right, and one of the nice things about all this, even though there's a lot of situations where we have individuals who have this kind of confrontation with these two, showing their leadership skills, what's important to me is the end result too. And I think if you look at where our county employees are, you look at the kind of retention that we've had, our county employees, the ones that I've communicated with, and I go to every single department, I meet with each of those different department heads. Actually, I'm going to the ambulance department tomorrow night to meet with their staffs. I go around and talk to them, and they seem happy.
Okay, let's see. Speaking of contentious, Terrence, let me put you on the spot again. The business about KCJJ.
Yeah.
Those of us who have listened to it occasionally or are regulars, I mean, I hear an awful lot of what I would characterize as hate speech, people being called fags and so on. What exactly is your role at KCJJ?
Sure.
And don't you think as a supervisor, you should provide leadership and either move away from KCJJ or use your influence to get them to clean up their act and be polite human beings on the air?
Well, yeah, sure. KCJJ has been one of those issues. When I ran 4 years ago, a lot of people said, should you be on the radio and should you be a county supervisor? And I think I've been able to find a pretty fair balance. You look at my role at the radio station, which is part-time. I work a few hours a day.
So you're not a part owner?
Oh, heavens no.
Okay.
No, just part-time. I do the business and the books, and I read the newscasts.
Does it make you uncomfortable to come on and read the news after somebody's been saying fag and this about other people?
Yeah,
does that
sure
make you uncomfortable?
Absolutely it does. No question about it. But these guys that are on the morning show, Captain Steve and Anthony, they just let everyone talk. I mean, that's what the whole beauty of KCJJ is, at least, is that it allows for public and free expression, similar to what this show is.
So if they said, kill the Jews in town, or
I don't think you're going to hear that
no,
kind
I'm
of
just.
talk.
I mean, do you have any borderlines
Yeah,
that you think for you personally?
Personally,
I mean,
yeah,
it's covered in the
I
First
can't
Amendment.
stand 9/10 of it, but you know what? I listen to it every day, and it's the #1 radio show. We've seen numbers of 30 to 40,000 people listening every single morning in Eastern Iowa. So someone likes it.
So as long as they're making money.
Well, sure, as long as it's a viable
ratings
business,
are-
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
but again, my role right now on KCJJ, and will continue to be, is I am on late in the afternoon. I'm not a part of the morning broadcast any longer, and it's a pretty wild show. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I don't like about it, but a lot of people are listening. Somebody must like it a lot.
Well, somebody must, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people I've talked to find it pretty repellent, and they would wish you would kind of move out of that scene because they think you're doing, they want to judge you on your job as a supervisor without the distraction of these awful comments on KCJJ, which are.
Yeah. Well, the way I look at it is, 4 years ago, I've been at KCJJ, by the way, since high school, since I was at City High School. So the way I look at it is, I was top vote getter in the Democratic primary and in the general election. It obviously didn't offend people then. Hopefully, in this particular election coming up, we'll find out if it offends people.
All right. Rick, you mentioned that there are a lot of reasons you're running besides county planning. How about throwing out a few others?
Well, I touched on them briefly. I think I have after 32 years, I mean, I'm bohemian, but I think I can still learn something as time goes on. So, I think I've learned an awful lot in 32 years, and I think that working knowledge is something that you don't see from boards of supervisors from that end. And I think I can bring that to the table. And I have a learning curve. I mean, I'm not real strong in certain areas, but I have a lot of strengths in a lot of areas. And again, I've worked with the public in Johnson County since 1989, a direct working relationship. And then we've touched on that in other discussions. I work daily with farmers, attorneys, contractors, developers, bankers, real estate people. So I have a lot of interaction with people. I understand what their views are. I understand about government. So without saying specifics, I believe I can bring that to the table for the board as something I don't think they've ever had. Somebody that's actually worked in government before running for the board. Now, I could be wrong.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Rick. You mentioned developers. What do you think? Do you think it's proper that developers make campaign contributions to people who are going to be supervisors?
Of that
Or
list,
people who are supervisors?
Sure.
Do you think that's proper?
I think it's very appropriate. They're people. They're taxpayers in Johnson County. I don't think anybody's going to sway their decision based off of a campaign donation, because there's limitations put on that.
Yeah, I'm aware of the fact that we're talking $25, $50, maximum maybe $100. But doesn't it, if you look through somebody's campaign contributions in total, and by the way, the first reporting that we're really going to see is May 19th.
Right.
So some of you might have access to the Iowa Ethics Board before that, before you see this show, repeated. Don't you think that it sort of decides who shows who your friends are? Not necessarily that you're going to be influenced by one $25 or one $50 or $100 contribution, but the fact that this is who your friends are. This is who you go to for advice. Sort of the influences on you. Don't you think that could influence a person?
I don't know if they're
in total, if you have
friends.
a number of them.
These people have sued me. I've filed papers against my campaign chairman for building without permits. So I think it's more they want somebody in there with the integrity that I showed to do my job regardless who these people are. And I think that's what's proven.
Jim, do you think that's any sort of problem? Developers contributing to campaigns?
They can contribute all they want. I think it should be blindly, actually. I have not received one nickel from anybody in my campaign. I'm spending my own money. In fact, I'd like to offer a challenge to the other supervisors. I'm going to give 5% of my salary back to a neighbor center taekwondo club and a drum corps that I'm starting up for the kids in the underprivileged areas, which are over here on Broadway and on Pheasant Ridge. And I'm going to donate 5% of my salary, whatever it is, if I am elected, and it's going right in to pay for that drum corps.
Well, let's hear what the others have to say. I think that's a very admirable challenge that he's thrown down.
I do
Could I add
too.
one more thing?
Sure.
I don't believe in what KCJJ says. Terry told me that they were raking me over the coals. And
Well, they rake everybody over
I've
the
never
coals.
listened to KCJJ, so
They
I
rake
have
me
no
over the
idea
coals.
what they say. And I would say, if I were anybody and I heard the smut that they've supposedly been associated with, I wouldn't advertise there, and I wouldn't buy the product from anybody that does advertise there. And would have one question, Terry. Do you have an option to ever buy any of KCJJ if it goes up for sale?
I'm sure that when the owner, it's a single owner, so once that individual wants to sell, I'm sure that there's probably a lot of different options.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, hopefully, if you do buy it, you'll change it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Let's get back to the challenge that Jim threw out about
Yeah.
donating $5,000 to
Well, 5%.
5%. I'm sorry.
Well, number one, I'm married, so I'd have to ask my wife.
All right.
I mean, I don't make those unilateral decisions. I don't know if anybody else does, but I would not do that. Number two, my 77-year-old father lives with me also, so I'd want to discuss that with him. I'm not sure if that makes me a good candidate or not a good candidate if I donate my salary back, but I guess that'll have to be determined. Like I
So-
said, I've worked for 32 years in government, and I think I can do a good job regardless if I get 5% or 10% or 2%.
So you're not ready to make a commitment to give 5%.
Not without talking to my family.
All right, Terrence.
Yeah,
And this
sure.
is all just
Yeah,
new. None of
that's
us
great.
knew about this ahead of the time.
No,
of the show.
I'm very, very proud of all the different organizations that I work and I'm a part of. I make large contributions to a number of organizations. My wife and I do that. And, if we commit the money to one organization or to a number, I was at the free medical clinic the other day. We're heading to the domestic violence intervention programs fundraiser coming up. We, of course, participated pretty long time with the crisis center. So that's it's a nice cause, and but I'm real proud to say that I've donated a lot of money.
Okay, another question has come up. You're all running on the Democratic primary ticket. Can we assume that if any of you lose in June, that you will still remain good Democrats and support whoever wins? Or do you have any thoughts about running as an independent or Republican or any Green Party ticket, if that exists?
You think I'd go through this again?
All right.
No. No, I wouldn't. Thank you.
Okay. Jim?
I don't know. A lot of people probably don't even know me because I haven't been out campaigning and running hard, and it's primarily because I'm running on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in open, honest government. I think Johnson County has had open and honest government. I can't say that Terry has not been an honest and open man, and I can't say that others. But I've seen open and honest government, and I've seen the lack of it. And in the Iowa City, I can say I've seen the definite lack of it. And so what I'm trying to do is bring some honesty into politics at the level I can. There's no city council positions open this year. For me to aspire to be a state representative or something, I'd love it. Sure, if you want to elect me president, that's fine. But I gotta shoot for something that's at least, a star that's at least reachable, and I can impact the government. And I have a degree in accounting, and I've worked in construction all of my life in business construction, and I've done business consulting,
Okay.
and I've done just about everything I can do to handle budgets. So I feel that I'm very appropriate for this.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Because we are really out of time. Thank you all for being with us. Again, the June 8th primary, Democratic primary for county supervisor. 3 of the 7 candidates are here with me tonight. Terrence Neuzil, Rick Dvorak,
And
Jim Knapp.
a proud Democrat, Gary.
Proud Democrats
Absolutely.
all. 3 of you. All right, thanks for joining
Thanks,
us.
everybody.
We'll do a different show 2 weeks from tonight, May 24th, with other candidates. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.